Oh, hey, little Jimmy. Sorry, I was sobbing uncontrollably because the Illuminate are back.
Is there anything I can do to help?
Well, wait. Oh, yep, I'm over it. All right, what do you want, Jimmy?
Wow, you truly are a master of your emotions, Grandpa. Anyways, can you tell me about how all the Illuminate technology works?
Well, I don't see any reason why not. I do know a suspiciously undemocratic amount about this alien technology here.
Oh boy, undemocratic story time with Grandpa! That's right, everyone. You heard Grandpa Democracy correctly. Today, now the Illuminate have returned, it's time that we talk about how all their technology works. Let's start out somewhere that feels very familiar to us Helldivers. Their shield technology. When you fight the Illuminate, the big harvesters have bubble shields, the overseers have little directional shields they hold in front of them, and they may feel kind of familiar because they're kind of like the backpack shields we get. You shoot them enough, they'll break, but until then, they stop everything that comes at them. But how exactly do they work? Super Earth must have figured out in some manner because we made our own shields, most likely off of Illuminate tech for the First Galactic War. And Super Earth has declined to tell us how they work for us little Helldivers, but I have a theory here. I think these shields work in a very similar manner to how the magnetic field around Earth protects us from all sorts of space nonsense going on.
What in the hell are you talking about? How are their shields like Earth's magnetic field?
I'm getting to that, Grandpa, but I'm about to go on a scientific rant here, so sit yourself down. So this will be a super simplified description of how it works, but more or less, Earth's magnetic field extends far beyond our atmosphere, and when the sun decides to get a little angry and launch a solar flare at us that is full of plasma and charge particles flying at the Earth, the magnetic field will catch it, retain those charged particles until it cannot hold the energy anymore, and then dissipates it in wonderful shows to watch like the Aurora Borealis. And a quick flex real quick if you guys don't mind, I actually took this picture, and I'm really proud of how well it turned out. If you have never seen the Northern Lights in your life and you get an opportunity to, I strongly suggest you take it because they truly are incredible to see. Alright, back to the video. I think the Illuminate shields and the Helldivers shields from that work in a very similar principle. They collect bullets and lasers and things like that, retain all that energy, and then attempt to dissipate it through some sort of energy dissipation method they have. But if there's too much energy thrown at them, they get overwhelmed and break temporarily until it can dissipate that energy and put itself back up. Now, if these Illuminate shields are magnetic, this would explain how they're able to stop projectiles as well. Now, there's a chance that the Helldivers bullets are made of lead, and that's in fact not a magnetic material. I know my theory falls apart a little bit there, but this is a video game. I'll probably put a little more thought into it than the devs even thought. If they're magnetic, this magnetic field would be able to catch those bullets and drop them harmlessly to the ground, and it would dissipate the kinetic energy in them as it does that, and harmlessly sink it into whatever sort of energy sink they have. Unless too many are thrown at it and overwhelm it. Now, on the Harvesters, we actually know where the shield generator is. You've got these two vertical posts on the face of the Harvester above and below the laser. The top one is actually what generates the shield, because you can take out this top part, and the Harvester will stop generating a shield. So within this large antenna, horn, whatever you want to call it on the top of the Harvester, there's likely some large spinning magnetic device that helps generate this magnetic field. And as the shield absorbs energy, that device there probably channels the energy through the walker down into the ground, kind of like a lightning rod would. And if it gets overwhelmed and can't contain all that energy, the shield breaks and it has to reset itself and spin up for a while again to get the shield going. Hey, I see you there, buckaroo. What? You're not subscribed to the channel yet. I don't know what you're doing over there, but if you're not subscribed to the channel, you might miss out on the next video, which is going to be the technology of the automatons. So you better hit that subscribe button if you want to see that one. All right. I see you hitting it. Thank you. I'll see you next time. And back to the video. Now that we've established that these shields are magnetic in nature, it leaves a very interesting question for the Overseers. Because their shields are in fact not full circles like the Helldiver or Harvester shields. They're just a directional shield in front of them. This shield originates from a center point on their wrist, which fits well with it being something magnetic, and it's projecting this energy from this point. And it's shaped in some manner like maybe a plasma would, and it's contained through some space magic that us little Helldivers cannot understand. And by space magic, I mean technology so advanced that we think it's magic. And I've pulled this from an idea from Arthur C. Clarke, who had a quote that said, "Any significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." Now, you would think I would look up the context for this and who Arthur C. Clarke is, but this is not an Arthur C. Clarke video, and I don't feel like doing research because this is a Helldivers video. So we're getting back to talk about the Helldivers, alright? But this does bring up a good point, because often it's said that the Illuminate use some sort of dark space magic. This may not be the case. Like, we know how a lot of their technology works. We've reverse engineered a lot of it. The other stuff probably isn't just suddenly magic that they have, or like random magical mind control powers. It more likely than not is just a technology that, as Super Earthians, Super Earth citizens, whatever, that we cannot comprehend with our little human brains. It's just so advanced that we're like, that's gotta be magic. I don't know what that is. And the main part of Illuminate technology that I'm referring to might kind of be like magic is how exactly they mutated Super Earth citizens and control them in order to attack their previous neighbors. To us, it must seem like some dark magic ritual to be able to mutate a human in this manner and then control them to attack their friends. It's more likely than not some sort of Illuminate technology we don't understand. There was some research done by the Ministry of Science, apparently, on some captured voteless specimens and overseers themselves, and they found that the voteless contained very similar proteins and DNA to the overseers themselves. So more likely than not, they used some sort of insanely advanced method of splicing genes and whatnot to turn humans into kind of a human Illuminate hybrid that are the voteless. Super Earth did meddle in similar technologies, and it turned out quite poorly for them because they created the Terminids. The Terminids, which I have a couple videos on, were created by humanity taking the bugs from the First Galactic War, injecting them with all sorts of weird stuff, irradiating them, and eventually trying to get them to create more Element 710 for space travel. And, well, it worked. They create more Element 710, but they got a whole lot stronger, broke out, and now are attacking us. So, I don't know if it worked out that well. The Illuminate are likely using a much more refined version of this idea to take humans and convert them into human Illuminate hybrids through a process they've perfected. It's similar to the Terminid making process, but instead of just trying random radiation stuff, they've narrowed it down. They've probably got some sort of serum they can inject that'll just immediately get you to sprout claws and turn into part Illuminate, and then it'll probably changes your brain structure as well, so that they can control you better, convince you that, well, they illuminate the right way, and then they just go, ah, and come and attack humans. And you know for certain that these voteless are, in fact, still partially human, because, well, yeah, they got 2 arms and legs, but, when you kill them, sometimes they'll just randomly do a Super Earth salute, which shows they still have some humanity left in them, which makes it a whole lot more sad to have to kill all of them, but, you know, Super Earth, I guess, liberty, maybe?
Well, Jimmy, I don't have a great segue to the next part of the video, so I'm just gonna say random words now.
Oh, Grandpa, did you just do a 4th wall break?
Spaghetti.
Next up to talk about how they work is the Illuminate weapons. The voteless are fairly easy because, well, it's just their claws. They run at you and go, woo woo woo, I'm gonna slap you now, you're dead, alright, easy enough. But the other enemies are a little bit tougher. We'll start out with talking about the Harvester because that's the most interesting. It's got this giant blue laser that shoots out of his face and tries to cook you with. But how exactly does that laser work? Well, for that, a super quick rundown on how lasers themselves actually work. Lasers work because you have some form of crystal in the middle of an energy source, and it is being provided energy from said energy source, like a big lamp or an electrical current, something like that, and it's just powering up that crystal. Now you may ask, how does this crystal retain that power? Because if you put a mirror on the end of each side of the crystal, the light will bounce back and forth and keep getting stronger and stronger until it's ready to be released if you open up one side of the crystal and release the laser. This explains why the Harvester can't just be constantly firing its laser at you, because that'd obviously be the best choice. Like, oh, there's a Helldiver there, I'm gonna constantly fire the laser until it goes away, but it needs to shut off for a bit. That's because the laser needs to recharge to the level of power that would actually be dangerous for a Helldiver. So it needs to shut down for a minute, let the energy build back up, and then shoot the laser again. In the Harvester's main body section here, it's probably got a massive power source in it that is meant purely to charge up this laser, and also charge up the little arc attacks it does if you get too close to it. But you may be wondering, how exactly does this laser do damage to you as a Helldiver? Because, I mean, it's just light, how can that hurt you? And this is visible light, it's actually blue, which means we can figure out that it is around 500 nanometers, but it's just that the light is carrying so much energy, it heats up all the atoms in your little Helldiver body, and basically just roasts you. But from the Illuminate, the Harvester is not the only one that shoots giant balls of energy at you. The Overseers also do this too. The ground-based Overseer has a spear that'll shoot a big blue ball of energy at you. The flying elevated Overseers, they also shoot little balls of energy at you that are kind of purplish. To get an idea of how these weapons work now, we can actually take a look at the first game. In the first game, there's an enemy called the Hunter that was a sniper-style unit. It would sit in the back and throw beams of light at you that were quite damaging. But how did these work exactly? Well, it's said that this Hunter used an electro-pulse gauntlet that it would charge up and shoot energy at you. Our current Overseers probably use a very similar thing that's instead built into their spears and guns. It'll charge up a ball of plasma that's electrically charged and then just launch it at you. This works for the spear, charges up longer, shoots a bigger ball. This also works for the elevated Overseers that have the gun. Get little balls of plasma together and launch them at you all at once. Now, there's one thing the Illuminate do that is not exactly a weapon per se, but could be considered similar to one. The Illuminate towers have the ability to scramble your stratagem inputs. Now, it's kind of up for debate whether they're actually scrambling your brain, because in the first game, they had the ability to scramble which way you were walking and aiming, so they could actually mind control you, or if now, they're just scrambling your communications inputs and causing you to have to put in different inputs to actually get what you want. I think that since the Illuminate don't currently have the ability to confuse which way you're walking or aiming, I think that might add in the future, for being honest, because it was in the first game, and I think there's new Illuminate enemies coming at some point in the future. But right now, in the game, as of the time of recording this video, I think they just use some sort of radio frequency blocking to mess up your inputs going up to the Super Destroyer and just scramble what you're telling them you need. But weapons aren't the only interesting thing the Illuminate have. The Illuminate have the warp ships that are a technological marvel. They can float in the air, they can teleport down enemies onto the ground. They can even land on the ground to let enemies just walk off at will. Let's first talk about that teleporting, because when a warp ship gets called in and it comes in above you, it makes a giant big blue beam of light that flashes down to the ground and enemies appear under it. The Illuminate seem to have mastered some sort of teleportation technology that us Super Earthians could not possibly understand. It's almost like they disassemble the enemies inside the ship, beam them back down onto the ground, and reassemble them right there on the ground. While our little human brains could never comprehend how teleportation technology like this works, I think we do know how they're flying. It's kind of similar to what I mentioned earlier that the Illuminates have mastered the use of magnetic fields to make their shields. I think they're flying above the ground because they have mastered that use of magnetism. They're using magnetic forces to keep themselves in the air, whether it's kind of interacting with the planet's magnetic field that they're on to kind of push the spaceship up and they can vary the field, whether they want to go up or down, forward and backwards. I think they're using magnetism in some manner to fly these ships. But that's likely only in the atmosphere when they're using these magnetic fields to float and move around and whatnot, because you'll notice these warp ships do have engines on the back. And since there's no magnetic field in space for them to take advantage of, they're going to need these engines in back to be able to fly through space, and they likely use these engines for faster-than-light travel because they are called warp ships, so they must be able to warp somehow. But what exactly is going on when these warp ships land on the ground, post up, put their shields up, and start just pumping out voteless? Well, my dear viewers, I think this is where they are, in fact, converting the Super Earth citizens into the voteless, because they've landed on the ground, they're walking the normal citizens in, scrambling them, putting in Illuminate DNA, whatever they do to them, and they're turning them into those nasty voteless. Because you'll notice if you watch these ships on the ground, slowly voteless will pop out. It's not like they're just running out all at once and there's huge swarms of them. It's just very slowly they're getting pumped out. This is probably as they're transformed and ready to go, they'll throw out a couple out there onto the field. Which is probably how, when you're walking to the cities, you'll notice there is swarms of hundreds of them. They've been sitting down there, all shielded up, and just turning our citizens into Illuminate. Now, the warp ships are not the only thing Illuminate have that just floats around in the sky and causes problems. You've also got the Watchers. They float around just like the warp ships do, so they probably use a very similar magnetic field to hold themselves up, and they also have engines in the back to propel themselves forward. One interesting thing we don't know about the Watchers, are these fully robotic, or is there an Illuminate hiding inside actually controlling them? I think that these things are fully robotic, because once they find you, they kind of lock onto you and just float around you until you can either kill them, or, they kill you. If these Watchers were actually piloted by an Illuminate, I would expect them to try to get to cover when you start shooting at them, but they don't. They just sit there and float and stare at you. So these things are more likely than not just robots sending up flares to call in more Illuminate. But you may be thinking to yourself, okay, fine, the warp ships move off of magnetism or whatever when they're on a planet. The Overseers seem to have a jetpack on them, and specifically that jetpack's a weak point if you shoot at them. Well, you would be right. I'm gonna guess that whatever kind of technology they use to manipulate magnetic fields to get their ships to fly is just too big to put into a backpack for an overseer to fly around with. So they give them more of a standard jetpack that uses some kind of fuel in the engines to keep them up in the air. But speaking of overseers, there's one interesting to talk about with the overseers themselves, because they seem to wear heavy armor, both of them, the flying ones and the ones on the ground. With the flying ones being a little bit sleeker, a little bit skinnier, and the ones on the ground being much more heavily armored. But there's a very interesting fact about the overseers and just the Illuminate as a whole. It's said that the Illuminate come from a water-based planet, and they were originally an aquatic species that developed space travel and whatnot. But since they developed in this water-based environment, that causes problems for when they want to travel to areas that are not water-based. They probably wear these suits that are full of water in some manner because they cannot breathe air. But it's not just a spacesuit likely to help them survive on planets. This suit is probably what also helps them walk around. Since they've developed on a water-based planet, they relied on that fluid to hold themselves up. That's how they were able to get around. But when they're on a planet with air, they have a much thinner fluid in just, air that doesn't hold them up as well, so they're likely much weaker on a planet like this. It seems like they're able to get around pretty well, so I think the suits themselves are powered in some manner, like our walkers, to be able to help them walk around and slap at Helldivers and whatnot. This means these suits probably have some form of power generated onto them, not only to power the movement and help them walk, but also to power the shield that the Overseer gets and power the jetpack that the elevated Overseer gets. But I think that's enough talking about the Illuminate for one day. So, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you hit the like button down below, and if you're looking to see more content like this, I'd love if you consider hitting that subscribe button to stay tuned for more. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.